He's back on this episode of the Locked On Aggies podcast.
You are Locked On Aggies, your daily podcast on the Texas A&M Aggies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Locked On Aggies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I am your host, Joey Ikes. Thanks for making Locked On Aggies your first listen. We are free and available wherever you get your podcast. I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions may apply. I'm joined again by my good friend Cameron Honesty, who works with me at Aggies Wire. And Cameron, we got some pretty big news on Tuesday evening, where we learned that Bravion Rogers, the LaGrange cornerback from LaGrange, Texas, who decommitted from A&M a little over a month ago, or a little under a month ago now, has decided, you know what, A&M is the place for him, and he is recommitted and is rejoining the Aggies 2023 recruiting class. Talk a little bit about this process that we've sort of gone through with Bravion for the last month. And, just before you get started, I think it's important that these kids have the opportunity to live and embrace this process and whatever that looks like. And I think the fact that, and I've talked to, John Garcia, our guy from Sports Illustrated, about this exact topic, about how the schools that allow these prospects to sort of live this process and who don't get overly caught up in it have a really massive advantage, because they don't eliminate themselves from any contention for any prospect. Even though a guy like Bravion Rogers decommits in early August, A&M doesn't stop calling. They don't, cut him off. They don't, shun him or anything. They just let him live the process and just continue to recruit him, just like he's any other player who they really want to be a part of their program. And I think it shows when you get results like this. What does it mean for Bravion to be back in the fold from a football standpoint, but also what does it say overall about A&M as a recruiting staff and as a football program?
Well, yeah, no, you set me up well there, because I totally agree with that. The new recruiting, and I would call it the new recruiting. This is more progressive recruiting, if you want to use that terminology. And it's not the old school of, hey, I got 3 offers, and if I don't go to one or all 3 of those schools and 2 eliminate, and I don't commit to this program, my future is over. No more football. I have to go work in insurance or something. That's just not how it works anymore. And so I thought it was really great of them to let him do that. And that's really from my perspective that he first committed in April. He was one of the first recruits, I think, for the 2023 class, kind of set them up and, for success. It looked like that, because this is one of the most talented cornerbacks in the entire 2023 class. And like you said, it comes from tiny LaGrange. He's a superstar there, and every high school has their superstars, but superstar rankings are really based on potential and how they fit in these bigger programs. And so, yeah, that was a huge get to start. And when he had been coming back to College Station this summer, he had gone to I believe he was an attendee for the pool party. And so everything looked fine. He was locked in. And then, a month ago, I think it was about August 8th, you and I and everybody else in Texas A&M media just kind of saw that late night, I think it was an Instagram post and a tweet. And, I was about to go to bed. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this is confusing, because I mean, if it was any other recruit and any other day who was oh yeah, I'm going to A&M, but, I'm keeping my options open type of player. And there's a lot of those guys, and that's fine. But Bravion Rogers was an early signee, somebody who was recruiting on behalf of A&M as well, the guys he knew, just, hey, it's great here, hey, come in July, see the sites, see the campus, see the facilities. And so when he put that tweet or an Instagram post out basically saying, I've talked to my family, I've talked to my friends, and we've made the decision to reopen my recruitment, I kind of looked at that like, there's got to be something else there. There's got to be, hey, like you said, take advantage of going to all the visits you can. And when you do, these kids have the opportunity of a lifetime to go see what all these schools have to offer, not just what they know A&M has to offer, even though what A&M has to offer is probably more than most. They're tied probably with Alabama and a couple other big universities, Ohio State, and LSU. And yeah, we heard maybe some grumblings about LSU and another program. We're talking to him and trying to see where he was at. But honestly, I think his commitment today and how he kind of solidified. He said, I'm home, and he's probably been home for a while. It's just he wanted the opportunity to see what else was out there, and there's nothing wrong with that. People who think there is something wrong with that, well, you're being a fan, and that's fine. But this is the process. This is a business, and these kids are making business decisions. But on the side of how big it is for A&M, it's huge. It's monumental for the 2023 class, which is built around offensive line and defense right now, and especially in the defensive back group. And he's joining Javon Thomas, who he's good buddies with, who I think they played on probably AAU teams together in the past. And those are, combined with him and Derek Brooks, I believe, who is going to play safety there, one very versatile athlete. This is a very, very talented room right now that, in combination with the 2022 class this year, who are going to play a lot of snaps and get a lot of experience this season in the SEC. They're all good. Most of them, hopefully all of them, are going to be back next year, and they're going to see even more. A lot of them are going to be starters. A lot of them are going to be even bigger rotational players. And when these kids come in, some of them are going to play rotation, and they're going to be playing with some of the best athletes in the country. So it's a no-brainer for me, and I'm glad to see it was really a no-brainer for Bravion, and I'm very excited. I know you are too. And I can't wait to see, because this kid has it. He has it at the corner.
Absolutely. And the thing about Bravion and this commitment, when you combine Bravion Rogers with Anthony Hill, Javon Thomas, like you mentioned, Dalton Brooks, like you mentioned, that is, according to 24/7, the 24/7 composite, that is, Anthony Hill is the number 3 prospect in the state of Texas.
In Texas, yeah.
Yes. Bravion Rogers is the number 9 prospect in the state of Texas. Dalton Brooks is the number 12 prospect in the state of Texas. And Javon Thomas is the number 15 prospect in the state of Texas. So that is 4 of the top 15 prospects in the state of Texas, all on the defensive side of the ball, who are now committed to A&M. And that doesn't even include guys names like David Hicks, who's the number 1 prospect in Texas, who A&M is part of his top 2 with Oklahoma, and they're in a dogfight in that recruitment. That doesn't include Peyton Bowen, who A&M is heavily invested in the idea of flipping him off of his Notre Dame recruitment. And that doesn't include Javion Toviano, who is announcing his commitment at some point relatively soon, we believe, but they're in a dogfight with Texas and LSU and a couple other guys for that. So in other words, the concern and the consternation about A&M and where their recruiting class was going to land for 2023 was A, early, and B, probably unwarranted to a certain extent, at least.
Yeah.
And it just continues to show that they're not done, and that even when it feels like they might be done, they're not done, right?
Yeah.
That even when when a guy decommits and it feels like, for so long, that meant it was over. Like when a guy decommitted from your school, it's like, okay, he wouldn't have decommitted if he wasn't sure he didn't want to go here. He made the decision to commit. You would think that would mean he was sure he did want to come. And now you would think it would mean that a decommit means that he doesn't want to come. But maybe it's not the case. And in the case of Bravion Rogers, and in the case of Johnny Bowens, a Converse Judson defensive lineman who has had quite an opening to his senior high school season, they are both very much still, Bravion is back in the fold, and Johnny is still very much within the realm of possibility and in heavy consideration of returning to the A&M class.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. So, like I mentioned earlier, LinkedIn Jobs is an unbelievable place. As you gear up for fall, you need to find the right people for your team to help your small business fire on all cylinders. And LinkedIn Jobs is here to make it easier to find the people you want to talk to faster and for free. I've mentioned on this show several times that each of the last few positions that I've held in my full-time career, I have found directly through LinkedIn. You can create a free job post in minutes on LinkedIn Jobs to reach your network and beyond to the world's largest professional network of over 810 million people. Then add your job and the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring so your network can help you find the right people to hire. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. And on the flip side, as having been a candidate behind this LinkedIn Jobs process, those screening questions are awesome for candidates to know what the biggest priorities from your job description are. When you ask those follow-up screening questions, they know what the most important things are in that job based on those questions, and it helps them self-screen and self-filter out. And that is just another reason why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number one in delivering quality hires versus their leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the candidates you want to talk to faster. Did you know every week nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn? That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Cameron, it is football season, and we are so excited to have real life Texas A&M Aggies football to talk about. And they got off to a pretty good start. They faced the Sam Houston State Bearkats, perennial FCS powerhouse over the last half decade or so.
Yeah.
They've lost one game in the last calendar year and a half, basically.
Yeah.
Until they played A&M, won a national championship in the 2020 quote-unquote season, and made another playoff run last year. And they came to Kyle Field, and they were ready to play.
Yeah.
Again, we talked 9 FBS transfers just last year from between the 2021 and 22 seasons on that Sam Houston State Bearkats roster. Yeah. Aggies win 31-0. What were your big takeaways from the Aggies' victory over the Bearkats on Saturday?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway for me was the offense. Look, I'm not gonna do a deep dive into. I mean, yeah, we all could. We could do the deep dive into Haynes King and look at the 2 balls he threw, the 2 interceptions, and go, why are you doing that? Why are you throwing in coverage? You know what? After the game ended, after 6 hours with the combined weather delay, we had a lot to think about. You kind of came in thinking, okay, A&M needs to dominate. We talked about in the pod last week that the defensive line needed to dominate. They needed to keep Jordan Yates in the pocket. They needed to show dominance in accordance with the talent and the rotation they had and all the bodies they could put out there, especially on defense, and that A&M's offense needed to show some explosion. Everything happened except Jordan Yates did get out of the pocket a couple times. Granted, he's a good athlete. I'll give him that. He can run, and he's going to make some noise in the FCS this year. He's gonna score some points, and he's going to probably score a lot of rushing touchdowns himself. So I can totally see that. But really, the biggest takeaway I have is on offense. It's from the explosive nature that Haynes King had with Anais Smith in 2 scores. I think it was a 43-yard touchdown. I think the other one was a 63-yard touchdown. And I think his first touchdown was to Keith Brown on that kind of beautiful slot fade. He dropped it right in his hands. And we saw, I mean, when I did the profile earlier this year on Keith Brown, I was telling people, it was me, I think Robert Behrens of Good Bull Hunting, and a couple other people in Texas A&M going, got to watch out. This kid's going to get a lot of playing time, and he is fast, and he is kind of he is dangerous on posts, on slots, and he can play multitude of positions at the wide receiver in the wide receiver grouping. And so I'm very pleased in what I saw there. I think three of his touchdowns are long, explosive plays, and he was giving these receivers a chance to show what they can do, and showing that his throw power has increased. He's gotten smarter in the pocket. We saw him run a couple times, and Haynes showed that athleticism, speed. And of course, we're kind of like, don't, please slide next time. But hey, he's a tough kid, and I was excited to see him show that toughness and show that demeanor and show that relentlessness to come out and say, hey, I'm going to sling it. And Jimbo trusts me. Daryl Dickey trusts me. Everybody trusts me right now because we need to get down the field in a more vertical nature. We need to show teams, especially in the SEC, that we can match with them. We can match with the Bryce Youngs, in which they're getting explosive plays every other play on offense. We can do that, and we have Devin Achane to kind of expel us when maybe the passing game's not doing so hot. But that was the one thing that didn't really occur on Saturday, was that he had, I think his total yardage was 43 yards on the ground. I think it was 18 carries. And yeah, at the first half, it was pretty atrocious. And that wasn't his fault. It was most of the blocking. And I mean, we could talk about that for an hour, of that, maybe this line is still going through a growth period with Steve Adazio, that they're still trying to figure out who fits what position, especially on the left side. And we saw that Trey Zune, first-year starter, Akia Boye, for pretty much first-year starter as well at the left tackle, left guard positions. And then Matthew Wyckoff, who backs up starter Bryce Foster, who's out, I believe, with an illness. His return is still up in the air. But again, Wyckoff had been playing very well in fall camp, so we weren't too worried about that. Now, we did see some high snaps from him to start the game, which was a little worrying. And then the most interesting part was kind of the rotation. I think taking Layden Robinson out, putting Jordan Moko into that right guard position. So that was interesting too. But they cleaned it up in the second half, and Achane did get going. And when he scored his 1-yard touchdown, that was a lot of his offense. That was a lot of him running the ball. So really, to kind of sum it up, I haven't mentioned the defense yet, really, because I was pretty impressed with them. They pitched a shutout. The defensive line, I think they played 8. It was like 18. It was a big number of how many freshmen played. I can't give you the exact number, but it was big. And you saw all these names just come out. I mean, you saw Walter Nolan put some pressure and get some pressure in the pocket. You saw Shamar Stewart. You saw Denver Harris was huge at the corner position. He showed why he's a 5-star recruit, why he's a guy that deserves playing time right now. I was very, very impressed with those kids. And the fact that they pitched a shutout in their first collegiate game in terms of how much they played is very, very impressive and very, very exciting moving forward, because, the road ahead there's a lot of offensive teams you're going to play. And so you have to be prepared for that. And I think these kids now have a lot more swagger. They have a lot more confidence of what they were able to do, because like you prefaced, Sam Houston State, especially this Sam Houston State team, was good. They are not a slouch. They are going to be a very good team in the FCS this year. We have to remember the North Dakota States of the world, have beaten, I think, Iowa, and they've beaten, a couple of FBS teams to start the season. It wasn't out of the question. Well, I shouldn't say that. It was not out of the question that Sam Houston State would be competitive. Were they very competitive in this game on paper and on the score? No, but they did hold their own. And he made some errant passes, and they missed out on some scores, especially when Jordan Gilbert intercepted Yates. I think it was at the 10-yard line or something like that. That changed the momentum completely, because I think they could have probably scored a touchdown. They could have made it close, but A&M shut it down. DJ Durkin shut it down on defense, said, we're not letting these guys score today. And overall, I was very impressed. I was very pleased with what I saw, and I'm excited to see, especially Haynes King. I'm not really worried about the defense. I think they're going to keep rotating guys in, and the veterans played very, very well. But yeah, Haynes King and that offense, I think we have something there, and I think they're going to keep getting better and better, because what really helps him every week is knowing that he has Anais Smith. He has Agent Zero. I mean, he's got his guy, and that guy is going to be there for you no matter what each game when things aren't going well in the passing game. But then you have all these weapons like Evan Stewart, Chris Marshall, who also had I forgot to mention them. Let's throw them in there. Had very good games in their first collegiate game. So really, I'm not too worried, and I'm very excited for this weekend. I'm pumped.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you sort of nailed all the points there in that, what you wanted to see from the A&M offense was explosiveness, and they put up as many 40-yard passing plays in this game against Sam Houston as the entire season, the entire team did in all of the 2021 season.
I actually love that stat.
Yeah, I think that's amazing, like just how unbelievable that is. And I mean, your quarterback throws for 364. He throws 2 interceptions. And there was another ball deep to the post that he threw too flat, needed to put some air under it. But even if he just puts the ball over the top a little bit more to Evan Stewart to the post on the play that B.J. Foster, the 5-star former Texas recruit for Sam Houston, intercepted, you're looking at a 21 for 31, 400-yard, 4-touchdown day for your quarterback. And you're looking at 2 receivers with over 100 yards on the day and like just an unbelievable day from the offense. And you're looking at a 40-0 victory. And then my favorite number from the game is probably the fact that the biggest single play that Sam Houston had in the entire game was a fake punt in the fourth quarter when the game was already well out of reach, and the punter takes the snap and runs for 18 yards on a 4th down when the game was well out of reach. And so that's my favorite individual stat. And if you pull that out, they had 180 yards of total offense on the day.
Yeah, they shut them down completely. Yeah. I mean, it was. I think a lot of people that's kind of how I took it at the end. I think a lot of people looked at it and went, "Oh, it's only 31-0." I saw other fan base, "You only beat them 31." I'm like, they didn't do anything. They literally kind of showed up, and A&M's defense did not let them get past the 50 at some points. I mean, it was a total dominant shutdown. It just wasn't the kind of violent defensive party that people like to see and think, "Oh, well, that's dominance," because they don't, But hey, they did their job and then some. So,
yeah, absolutely. And there's also the dynamic that you have this 3-hour rain delay, and what does that do to an offense when they come out in the second half? And how long does it take A&M to sort of get rolling again? And they sort of made a very conscious decision to come out and run the football in the second half and to put an emphasis on getting that part of the game going. There's definitely some well-earned concern about the interior offensive line, just because you had the illness to Bryce Foster and the fact that how little he's practiced over the course of the 2022 year between track and field in the spring and then being hurt in the fall. And Matt Wyckoff had a good camp. All the reports were good coming out, but he's not Bryce Foster, right?
Yeah.
And then you have Layden Robinson, who also, missed a pretty decent amount of camp. And so they had the rotation going with Jordan Moko. And that's a ton of instability on the interior offensive line in an area that relies on communication and continuity and all that kind of stuff. And then you pile on the fact that Sam Houston brings a lot of movement and a lot of stunts and twists and things like that on the especially on the interior of the defensive line. Yeah. And that's a tactic that teams will use when they are a little bit overmatched from a physical capability standpoint to try to create angles and disruption, especially in the running game. And that's what Sam Houston was able to do. So hopefully, you'll see A&M get some stability going on the offensive line. Hopefully, Bryce Foster feels better and is able to work his way back into the starting lineup. They'll get Layden worked up to a full workload, and things will start to look better as we start to turn our eyes towards week 2, which is Appalachian State. So, Cameron, talk to me a little bit about this insane game that Appalachian State played in week 1,
God.
where they took on the University of North Carolina. And at one point, I'll say it this way. Going into the fourth quarter, the score was 41-21, North Carolina. And there were 62 points scored between the two teams in the fourth quarter. Just bonkers game going on between these two teams. And one of the best parts to me is very rarely do you see one of these big schools like North Carolina go play at a place like Appalachian State. I love the fact that it was at App State. And just two missed 2-point conversions in the last 2 minutes of the game for App State. Talk to me about, what this team is, what we know about them from this one game, that they'll score a lot of points and they can do it in a hurry if you let them.
Yeah.
And then what A&M needs to sort of do to have the right sort of outlook going into this matchup.
Yeah, no, we'll do. So, after the first game, we're still doing a lot of analysis, and that's what we just did with Sam Houston State. And so I've had a little time, so far to look at Appalachian State from a deep dive. But you forgot to mention the special teams play. I mean, that ended the game, and then the North Carolina player returns it and gives them 20 seconds left, and go, hey, here you go, team that is going to shred our defense.
You scored 33 to 34 points in the fourth quarter already. Why not see if you can score 42?
Exactly. We had a break during the weather delay, so everybody on Twitter, like, oh, you got to go watch this game. So, all right, and you knew right when that happened that Chase Bryce was going to, their quarterback, Appalachian State's quarterback, Chase Bryce, was going to go down the field and just shred them. And he did. And he just found the open. So, really, there's my summary. No, I'm just kidding. But App State, who I just mentioned, is led by Chase Bryce, who's been in college football for a long, long time. I think he started with Clemson. I think he was their kind of high four-star player, I believe. And then he went to Duke, and then he might have gone to Northwestern. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. But he's been in a lot of systems for a long time. And he's the leader of this offense. App State has been through a plethora of coaches over the last couple of seasons. I think that I can't think of their new coaches right now, but they're very respected in college football. They will give you a game. It doesn't matter who you are. And Jimbo Fisher said that on Monday. He was talking about how I think he played them when he was with LSU as their offensive coordinator. And he said, I think that we were up 3 scores or something, but they just kept coming out and digging and trying, and just the effort was relentless. And so I couldn't tell you right now exactly what the outlook is now, because they are kind of a wild card, but we have to look at it from the defensive standpoint first. Their offense, they have a good quarterback. They have 2 very good running backs. They have a pretty speedy receiving core. They, the offense is pretty standard in college football, standard college football, pretty fast, very fast cadence. But yeah, it's one of those things where if you're A&M, you're coming off of a shutout game where defensively you dominated, offensively you showed a lot of promise, and this is now Haynes King's second full game with Texas A&M. And it's against a team that scored 61 points. But it's also against a team who gave up 63 points. So we have to really hit on that. They played zero defense. And when you watch college football, when you watch any football, and you know what you're watching, I'll give you an example. Iowa played South Dakota State this weekend. They won 7-3. It was an atrocious game from an offensive standpoint. What saved them was really good defense, was shutdown defense. A&M, I don't think A&M's defense, especially their defensive line, is afraid of Appalachian State. I don't think they are going into this weekend in some type of fear that they scored a lot of points, so we really got to buckle down. I think that specifically the defensive back room is going to have to look at, okay, let's go watch some tape from last week. Let's look what we did wrong specifically, especially in zone coverage against Sam Houston State. What let Jordan Yates kind of run on us a couple times. We had some coverage issues, but look, I just don't think they're afraid of them. I don't think Jimbo Fisher's afraid of them. I think he's excited to play a really good program, a very respected program in App State. And I'm sure they're excited to come to Texas A&M because, like you said, that game going to App State, that was the biggest game in their history. I heard.
Yeah.
That was the biggest game in their history. And what do we know App State from doing? I was in 7th grade, I think. They beat Michigan.
And blocked the punt and beat Michigan, absolutely.
Beat Michigan, yeah. And that's like one of the most historic games ever in college football history. So they're very well known to everybody. Everybody knows who App State is. They usually refer to them as App State instead of Appalachian State. But yeah, it's going to be fun. I think it's going to be a fun game. I think A&M is going to be ready for them. But I think a lot of fans specifically, so that's what I'm trying to counter here, is that look at the score of what they scored on offense. I get it. It's big number. And Chase Bryce passed for nearly 400 yards and 6 touchdowns, and the running backs had a couple touchdowns each. But look at what they gave up. And if you rewatch the game, the defense was horrible, and it seemed like they didn't show up. They just stopped caring. They just knew, it's like they knew, well, we have a good enough offense, and North Carolina's not playing defense either. We can get back in this, and they did. But A&M is a defensive-minded squad, and they just have too much talent right now for them to go into this game afraid. So I mean, that's my biggest takeaway right now is that a lot is going to come out about, does A&M have to keep up offensively with them? You got to slow the rope there, because this is not a team that is just going to score 50 plus on everybody. That's not going to happen. It was kind of an aberration. It was week 1. We look at like North Carolina State played East Carolina, and they were a heavy favorite in that. The team itself, North Carolina State, was a heavy favorite to win the ACC, and they struggled a lot, and they were lucky to get out of there without a loss, and they kind of showed in the rankings. They dipped in the rankings, and so you got to remember, week 1 is week 1. Things happen. We go back. You mentioned on the pod, I think last week, we go back to A&M in the COVID year. They played Vanderbilt at home, and I think they won 17-12 against Vanderbilt, who I don't think they won another game. I don't think they did. But come on, people are still adjusting. Like we said with the offensive line, they're still adjusting. This is like the NFL in a way. You have off seasons where guys get hurt, guys are out. So week 1, like in the NFL, week 1 is kind of, it's week 1. We're excited football's back, but it's not the most important thing right now. It's just get out healthy, try to win the game. But if you go 0-1, it's not the end of the world. If you go 1-0, well, yeah, it's great. College football, it's a little more detrimental for teams like A&M to obviously go 0-1. That would be horrific and kind of destroy their chances at anything this year. But they're 1-0. They're playing at home for the next 2 weeks. They're confident. I'm confident in them. So
yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned the journey for Chase Bryce. So he enrolled at Clemson in 2017, was with Clemson for the 2018 and 2019 seasons. Transferred to Duke in February of 2020.
Okay.
So that then spends 1 year, the COVID year, transfers right before COVID, a month before COVID starts. The COVID year happens. He plays that year at Duke. December of 2020, he enters the transfer portal again and transfers to App State, where he's been for the last 2 years. So this guy, he has had quite the journey, like you said, through college football. And again, I mean, if you think about it, other than the touchdown numbers, his numbers are not that different than what Haynes King put up. Exactly. And you could, I mean, no shot at North Carolina, but like you could argue the defenses are not that different. Like, especially what Sam Houston was able to put out there from a talent standpoint. I bet BJ Foster would have been the highest ranked recruit in that North Carolina secondary if he was playing for North Carolina.
No, I guarantee
so there's no reason to be more concerned than you, based on the results of the games in week 1, than you would have been going into the game. As you mentioned,
I agree.
It's Appalachian State. They have the reputation as, the giant slayers that will go into anybody's house. and give them a game and give them all that they can handle. But A&M just faced a relatively similar situation in Sam Houston of a bunch of local kids. Some of them were from the College Station. It's less than an hour from Huntsville to College Station. Like,
oh, I know.
It's
like a home game.
It's basically they got in buses and drove to College Station.
Yeah.
They didn't, and so they just faced a team trying to come in and kill the Giant. And one of the biggest jumps that you will see within a season, especially for a team like A&M that ran out something like you said earlier, like 18 true freshmen or something like that in this game.
Yeah.
The biggest jump you'll see within a season is the difference between game 1 and game 2, because this game 2, it's no longer their first college football game. It's no longer their first time at Kyle Field in front of 110,000 people. It's no longer any of that kind of stuff. Now it's football. Now it's back to work for another week. Get through the week, go through the game plan, get out there and execute. And I think A&M is going to be in a good place coming out of this App State game, going into week 3 for the big matchup against Miami.
Yeah, my last point is, they're confident because I remember Nia Smith, they were asking quite a lot of questions about the weather delay and what they were doing in the locker room. And he basically said, we weren't playing around. We were kind of doing push-ups. We were getting our legs going. We were walking around. We were just getting ready. We thought they thought it might be canceled at one point, but when they heard you're going back out, he said, this is all business. We're going to shut this down. We're not playing around anymore. These guys are. I just want to push this. These guys are determined. They are not playing. They're not going to play with App State and come in afraid or thinking, well, they did this last week. They are not. These guys are ready. And your point is perfect. These kids now have a full game under their belt, these freshmen. They're having fun. A lot of them, I saw a lot of smiles, they're having a good time. And they're going to be ready for this, and they're going to have fun with this game. And so yeah, we're gonna dive more into this matchup obviously later this week, and it's gonna be interesting. So
absolutely. Guys, thanks so much for listening to us today. I am Joey Ikes. Like I said, you can find me on Twitter at Joey Ikes. That's JoeyIckes. And you can find Cameron on Twitter at Cameron Honesty, CameronOhnsty. You can find the show at Locked On Aggies on Twitter. Please check us out on your podcast platform of choice with Locked On Aggies. Please leave us a 5-star rating and review there so we can grow the show there. And you can find our YouTube channel, Locked On Aggies on YouTube. Do all the YouTube things, like, comment, share, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you get notified every time we post a new video. Thanks again for making Locked On Aggies your first listen every day. Now for your second listen, go check out the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022, an 8-episode extravaganza to get you ready for the NFL season. The local team experts of the Locked On Podcast Network, plus a betting angle from Lee Sterling of Locked On Bets, all combining into one Ultimate NFL Preview. Search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.